Captain Sarah Chen pressed her face against the viewport of the Persistence and stared at the warning beacon floating in space. The red light blinked slowly, like a tired eye that had been watching this empty corner of the galaxy for too long. The message was simple and clear. Quarantine zone. No entry by order of the Galactic Council. "Captain, we should turn back," said Lieutenant Torres from behind her. "Our orders were to map this sector, not investigate quarantine zones." Sarah didn't move from the window. Something felt wrong about this place. The star charts showed a populated system here. Kepler 442b had once been home to millions of aliens called Zephyrians. Now there was only silence and a warning beacon. "Run a passive scan," she ordered. "I want to know what's down there." The crew of the Persistence was small but loyal. They had been exploring the outer rim of human space for 3 years, mapping new worlds and looking for resources. Sarah had handpicked each member for their skills and their ability to think for themselves. Right now, she was glad for that. "Captain," called Ensign Park from the sensor station. "I'm picking up life signs on the third planet. Thousands of them, but they're scattered and weak. Whatever happened here, there are still survivors." Sarah felt her heart skip. The Galactic Council had written this place off completely. They said the Zephyrians were all dead, killed by some terrible disease, but people were still alive down there, and nobody was helping them. "Take us in, but keep us hidden," she said. "I want to see what's really happening." The Persistence slipped past the warning beacon like a ghost. The ship's stealth systems were good enough to fool most sensors, and Sarah hoped the Galactic Council wasn't watching this dead zone too carefully. As they moved deeper into the system, the sensors told a story that made Sarah's stomach turn. The third planet was beautiful from space. Blue oceans and green continents wrapped in white clouds. But the cities that should have glowed with light were dark. The orbital stations that should have been busy with traffic were empty metal skeletons drifting in silence. "My God," whispered Dr. Martinez, the ship's medical officer. "What happened to them?" As they entered the atmosphere, they got their answer. The cities weren't just dark, they were broken. Great crystal towers lay shattered like broken glass. Streets that should have been filled with people were empty except for twisted metal and strange gray patches that looked like some kind of rot. But there were lights in the distance, small clusters of them, like campfires in the ruins of a once great civilization. Sarah landed the Persistence near one of these settlements, choosing a spot hidden by fallen crystal spires. Through the ship's cameras, they watched as figures moved in the dim light. The Zephyrians were still alive, but barely. The aliens were tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. They had once been beautiful, Sarah could tell, but now they moved slowly, like old people carrying heavy burdens. Many had strange marks on their skin, gray patches that looked like the rot they had seen in the dead cities. "Captain, I'm reading. Some kind of biological contamination," Dr. Martinez reported. "The air is safe, but there's something in their DNA. It's like a disease, but artificial. This isn't natural." Sarah made a decision that would change everything. "We're going down there." "Captain, that's against every regulation," Lieutenant Torres started. "Those are people down there," Sarah cut him off. "Dying people, and everyone else has given up on them." They suited up and left the ship. The Zephyrian settlement was bigger than it had looked from above. Hundreds of the aliens lived in crude shelters built from the wreckage of their crystal cities. Children played in the dirt between the buildings, but they moved wrong, like their bones didn't fit together properly. An older Zephyrian approached them. His shimmer was dull, and gray patches covered half his face, but his eyes were intelligent and kind. "You are the humans," he said in perfect English. His voice sounded like music, even rough with sickness. "We have heard of your people. Why do you come to this place of death?" "We heard you needed help," Sarah said simply. The alien's eyes widened. "Help? The great powers of the galaxy have declared us finished. They say we are diseased and dangerous. They say we should be left to die quietly so we do not spread our sickness to clean worlds." "What do you say?" Sarah asked. "I say we were murdered," the Zephyrian replied. His musical voice turned hard. "I say this sickness was sent to us by those who feared our strength. I say we are not dying of chance, but of choice, their choice." Over. The next few hours, Sarah and her team learned the truth. The Zephyrians called their sickness the silent rot. It attacked their DNA, making them weak and sick and unable to have healthy children. It had appeared 50 years ago, spreading through their population like wildfire. The worst part was how the galaxy had responded. The Galactic Council, led by the powerful Altarian Empire and the Cold Vagan Confederacy, had surrounded the Zephyrian system with warning beacons. They said it was to protect other species from the disease, but no medical ships came. No aid was offered. The Zephyrians were simply written off as a lost cause. We numbered 20 million when the rot came, the old alien told them. His name was Elder Veltar, and he had been a scientist before his world fell apart. Now we are perhaps 50,000, scattered across the ruins. Our children are born broken. Our knowledge dies with our elders. In a generation, maybe two, there will be no more Zephyrians in this galaxy. But even as he spoke of doom, Veltar showed them something amazing. In a hidden chamber beneath the settlement, ancient Zephyrian technology still hummed with power. Crystal computers that could think faster than any machine humans had ever built. Harmonic generators that could reshape matter at the atomic level. Weapons that could crack planets if the Zephyrians had chosen war instead of peace. This is why they destroyed us, Veltar said, touching one of the crystal computers with reverence. Not because we were a threat, but because we could have been. They saw our power and decided we were too dangerous to live, even if we chose to use that power for creation instead of destruction. Sarah felt anger burning in her chest. These people had been murdered, not by disease, but by fear and greed. The galaxy's most powerful empires had committed genocide and then covered it up with a quarantine. "We can help you," she said. "My people can help you." Veltar smiled sadly. "Your people are few and far from home. What can humans do against the great powers who have decreed our death?" Sarah looked around at the crystal technology, at the dying but proud people who had built it, at the children playing in the ruins of the greatest civilization this sector had ever known. "We can try," she said. "Sometimes that's enough." As the persistence lifted off from Kepler 442b, Sarah's mind was already working. She had samples of the silent rot, recordings of Zephyrian technology, and proof that a genocide was being covered up by the very powers that claimed to bring order to the galaxy. The Galactic Council had written off the Zephyrians as a lost cause, but they had forgotten one important thing about humans. They had never been very good at knowing when to give up. The meeting room on Earth's colonial station felt cold, despite the warm lighting. Sarah sat at the long table facing a row of officials who looked at her like she had brought something dirty into their clean, organized world. Administrator Marcus Webb, the head of Human Colonial Authority, tapped his fingers on the table as he read her report for the third time. "This is very disturbing, Captain Chen," he said finally, "but I'm afraid there's nothing we can do about it." Sarah felt her hands clench into fists under the table. "Sir, with respect, we have evidence of genocide. The Zephyrians are being systematically murdered, and the Galactic Council is covering it up." "What we have," Webb said coldly, "is the word of a dying species desperate for help, and a human captain who violated direct orders by entering a quarantine zone." He closed the report with a snap. "The Galactic Council has made their position clear. The Zephyrians are infected with a dangerous disease. Any contact with them puts other species at risk." "The disease is artificial," Sarah insisted. "Dr. Martinez ran full scans. The silent rot was designed to target Zephyrian DNA specifically. It's a bioweapon." Webb's advisor, a thin woman named Director Hayes, leaned forward. "Even if that were true, Captain, what would you have us do? Humanity has been part of the Galactic Council for less than a century. We're still the new species, still proving ourselves. We can't afford to make enemies of the Altarians or the Vegans over a dying alien race." "Dying because someone is murdering them," Sarah shot back. "Alleged murder," Hayes corrected, "based on evidence gathered during an illegal mission that has already damaged our diplomatic standing. The Altarian ambassador has filed a formal complaint about your intrusion into the quarantine zone." Webb stood up, signaling the meeting was over. "Captain Chen, you are hereby relieved of command pending a full investigation. Your ship will be impounded, and any materials you collected from the Zephyrian system will be turned over to proper authorities for disposal." Sarah felt the world spinning around her. "You're going to destroy the evidence?" "We're going to follow proper decontamination procedures," Webb said, "as required by Galactic Council regulations. I suggest you remember your oath to humanity. Captain, our species' future depends on maintaining good relations with our galactic neighbors, not picking fights we can't win." After the officials left, Sarah sat alone in the meeting room staring at her hands. Outside the windows, Earth's blue sky looked the same as always, but everything felt different now. She had seen people dying and begging for help, and her own. Government was going to let it happen to protect their political position. Her communicator buzzed. Dr. Elena Vasquez's face appeared on the screen. Elena was one of Earth's top genetic researchers, and she had been analyzing the samples Sarah brought back in secret. "Sarah, we need to talk," Elena said, looking around nervously. "Not here. Meet me at Murphy's bar on level 7. And Sarah? Make sure you're not followed. An hour later, Sarah sat in a dark corner booth, while Elena spread data tablets across the table between them. The bar was crowded and noisy, perfect for a conversation that needed to stay private. You were right, Elena said quietly. The silent rot is definitely artificial, but it's worse than we thought. Whoever made this thing didn't just want to kill the Zephyrians. They wanted to erase them completely. Elena showed Sarah a genetic chart that looked like a twisted ladder. The disease attacks their reproductive system first, making sure any children born are weak and sick. Then it slowly breaks down their nervous system, destroying memory and personality. Finally, it kills them. But here's the really sick part. It's designed to get worse over generations. Each new generation is more damaged than the last. That's why their children look wrong, Sarah realized. The disease is making sure they can't recover even if it somehow stopped spreading. Exactly. And look at this. Elena pulled up another chart. The genetic markers in the disease match bioweapon research from 50 years ago. I found references to it in some classified Altarian military files that got leaked during the Proxima conflict. Sarah felt cold anger settling in her stomach. The Altarians did this. That's what the evidence suggests. But Sarah, someone doesn't want this information getting out. My lab was broken into last night. They didn't steal anything, but they copied all my research. And this morning I got a visit from Colonial Security. They told me to stop working on anything related to the Zephyrians or face charges of violating quarantine protocols. They're covering it up, Sarah said. Our own people are helping cover up a genocide. Elena nodded grimly. The order came from the top. The Galactic Council made it clear that any species sharing information about the Zephyrian situation would face severe diplomatic consequences. Humanity can't afford to be isolated from galactic trade and protection. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the noise of the bar around them. Finally, Elena leaned closer. But there might be another way, she said. I've been talking to some people. Quietly, there are others who feel the same way we do. Over the next hour, Elena told Sarah about a growing network of humans who refused to accept the official position. There was Captain Marcus Rodriguez, whose freighter ship had been carrying medical supplies when the Zephyrian quarantine was announced. Dr. James Park, a retired military doctor who had seen too many genocides in his long career. Commander Lisa Zhang, who had been forced to retire early after questioning orders one too many times. We call ourselves the Sanctuary Fleet, Elena explained. It started as just people talking, sharing information that the government wanted buried. But now we're talking about action. What kind of action? Sarah asked. The kind that gets us all court-martialed if we're caught, Elena said with a grim smile. Marcus has 3 cargo ships and crews willing to carry medical supplies. James has contacts who can get us the equipment we need to synthesize treatments for the silent rot. Lisa knows how to plan operations that can slip past council monitoring. And what do you need from me? Someone who's been there. Someone who knows the Zephyrians and can speak for them. Someone willing to lead. Sarah thought about Elder Veltar's face, about the children playing in the ruins, about the crystal computers that could have changed the galaxy if fear hadn't destroyed their creators. She thought about Administrator Webb's cold dismissal and the Galactic Council's willingness to let an entire species die to maintain the status quo. How many ships? She asked. Elena smiled. 15 so far. Not much against the Altarian fleet, but enough to make a difference. And if the Galactic Council decides to stop us? Then we'll find out how much humanity's promises about protecting the innocent are really worth. Sarah stood up, decision made. Set up a meeting. I want to talk to everyone. As they left the bar, Elena caught Sarah's arm. You know this is probably suicide, right? Even if we succeed in helping the Zephyrians, we'll be marked as criminals by our own government. The Galactic Council will demand our extradition. We'll never be able to come home. Sarah thought about the crystal cities lying in ruins, about a people being slowly murdered while the galaxy watched and did nothing. Then we'll make a new home, she said, with people who think life is worth more than politics. That night, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the Colonial Station and looked out at the stars. Somewhere among them, the Zephyrians were dying while the galaxy turned away. But they weren't alone anymore. The Sanctuary Fleet was small and outgunned and probably doomed. But sometimes being right was more important than being safe. Sometimes standing up for the innocent was worth more than keeping your place in a system that valued order over justice. The galaxy had written off the Zephyrians as expendable. Now they were about to learn that some humans had a different definition of what mattered. The 15 ships of the Sanctuary Fleet looked tiny against the vast darkness of space. Sarah stood on the bridge of her new command ship, the Defiance, watching the other vessels fall into formation around her. They weren't much to look at. Converted cargo haulers, retired passenger liners, and a few small military ships whose crews had decided conscience mattered more than careers. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said Commander Lisa Zhang from the tactical station. Lisa had insisted on calling Sarah Admiral ever since taking command of the fleet, even though no government had given her that rank. Admiral. Sarah still felt strange hearing it. 3 months ago, she had been a disgraced captain facing court-martial. Now, she was leading humanity's first independent humanitarian mission, funded by private donations and crewed by volunteers who had given up everything to be here. "Take us to Jump Point," Sarah ordered. "Time to see if we can really make a difference." The journey to Kepler 442b took 2 weeks. During that time, Sarah walked through every ship in the fleet, meeting the people who had decided to follow her into almost certain disaster. There was Dr. Elena Vasquez with her portable medical labs, ready to mass-produce treatments for the silent rot. Captain Rodriguez had filled 3 cargo ships with food, building materials, and farming equipment. Retired Colonel James Park had brought a small army of volunteer medics and engineers. But the most important passenger was Dr. Kenji Nakamura, a specialist in alien technology, who had spent years studying Zephyrian crystal computers. He was their key to understanding how the aliens' tech worked, and maybe finding new ways to help them rebuild. "The theoretical applications are incredible," Dr. Nakamura told Sarah as they studied Zephyrian data crystals. "Their harmonic technology could revolutionize everything from medicine to space travel. If we can learn to integrate it with human engineering—" "One step at a time, Doctor," Sarah reminded him. "First, we keep them alive. Then we worry about the future." When the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at Kepler 442b, they found they weren't alone. 3 massive Altarian warships hung in orbit around the planet like metal vultures. Each one was 10 times the size of Sarah's entire fleet combined. "Unknown human vessels. This is Admiral Kethvar of the Altarian Imperial Navy," came a transmission, in the clicking, harsh language of the bird-like Altarians. "You are in violation of Galactic Council quarantine orders. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences." Sarah took a deep breath and activated the fleet's general communication channel so every ship could hear her response. "Admiral Kethvar, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Sanctuary Fleet. We are here on a humanitarian mission to provide aid to the surviving Zephyrian population. We will not withdraw." There was a long pause. When Kethvar spoke again, his translator made his voice sound surprised. "Admiral Chen, I have 1,200 crew members and enough firepower to destroy your entire fleet without taking damage. You have 15 converted civilian ships and no military support. I strongly suggest you reconsider." "Admiral Kethvar," Sarah replied, "I have something you don't have. I have people willing to die for what they believe in. We're not leaving." Another pause, then, "Very well. You have 12 hours to complete whatever medical assistance you feel necessary. After that, I will open fire on any human vessel remaining in this system." It wasn't much time, but it was something. Sarah ordered the fleet to split up, with half the ships establishing a protective perimeter, while the others headed for the planet's surface. If they were going to die here, they were going to make their deaths count. The Zephyrian settlements had grown since Sarah's first visit. Word of the humans' return had spread, and survivors from across the planet had gathered in a few large camps. Elder Veltar met them at the landing site, and Sarah was shocked to see how much worse he looked. The gray patches had spread across most of his body, and he moved like every step caused pain. "You returned," he said simply. "Many of us did not. Believe you would." "We brought help," Sarah said. "Medicine for the silent rot, equipment to help you rebuild, people to work alongside you. And what do you ask in return?" Veltar's musical voice was suspicious. In his experience, no one helped without wanting something back. "Nothing," Sarah said. "We ask for nothing except the chance to prove that someone in this galaxy still believes you deserve to live." Over the next 10 hours, the human fleet worked with desperate efficiency. Dr. Vasquez's medical teams began administering the treatment she had developed for the silent rot. It couldn't cure the disease completely, but it could slow it down and help the Zephyrians' immune systems fight back. Meanwhile, human engineers worked with surviving Zephyrian technicians to restore power to damaged crystal computers. Dr. Nakamura was amazed at what he found. The Zephyrian technology wasn't just advanced, it was revolutionary. Their crystals could process information using quantum harmonics that made human computers look like stone tools. But the real breakthrough came when a young Zephyrian named Kiravel approached the human teams. She was one of the few young adults who still remembered the old ways, and she offered to teach them how to interface with the crystal systems. "Your people think differently than ours. she explained to Dr. Nakamura as she showed him how to attune a crystal computer to human brainwaves. You are more adaptable, more willing to change. Our technology responds to that. The results were incredible. When human creativity combined with Zephyrian harmonic science, they created hybrid systems that surpassed anything either species could build alone. Communication devices that could send messages faster than light. Manufacturing systems that could assemble complex machines from raw materials in minutes. Defensive shields that could turn aside energy weapons by redirecting their frequency. This is what they were afraid of, Veltar told Sarah as they watched human and Zephyrian children playing together while their parents worked to rebuild the settlement. Not that we would conquer them with our weapons, but that we would surpass them with our knowledge. As the 12-hour deadline approached, Sarah made a difficult decision. Most of her fleet would return to human space to report what they had found and gather more supplies. But she would stay with a small group of volunteers to continue the work. "Admiral, that's suicide!" Commander Zhang protested. "The moment our ships leave, the Altarians will destroy you." "Maybe," Sarah said, "but someone needs to witness what happens here. Someone needs to make sure the galaxy knows what the Altarians do to humanitarian workers." But when the time came, something unexpected happened. As the Altarian ships powered up their weapons to fire on the remaining human vessels, the planet's surface lit up with a soft, harmonic glow. The crystal cities that had lain dark for 50 years suddenly blazed with light. "What is that?" "Admiral." Kethavar's voice came over the communication channel, and for the first time he sounded uncertain. Sarah smiled as she looked at the readings from the planet below. Working together, humans and Zephyrians had restored power to the ancient planetary defense network. The crystal computers that had seemed broken beyond repair were coming online, linked together in a quantum harmony that turned the entire planet into a massive fortress. "That, Admiral Kethavar, is what happens when you underestimate people who have nothing left to lose," Sarah said. The Altarian weapons fired, but their energy beams were absorbed harmlessly by the planet's shield grid. More than that, the hybrid human-Zephyrian technology began transmitting detailed records of the Silent Rot genocide across every communication frequency in the galaxy. Within hours, the evidence that had been buried for 50 years was broadcasting on every news network, every government channel, every social media platform from the galactic core to the outer rim. Pictures of sick Zephyrian children, genetic evidence of the artificial plague, recordings of Altarian officials discussing the final solution to the Zephyrian problem. The galaxy could no longer look away. Admiral Kethavar's fleet retreated in disorder as protests erupted on hundreds of worlds. The Galactic Council tried to suppress the broadcasts, but the hybrid technology was beyond their ability to stop. The truth was spreading like wildfire, and no amount of political pressure could put it back in the bottle. Standing in the Crystal Command Center that had been built by humans and Zephyrians working together, Sarah watched the galaxy wake up to what had been done in its name. They had saved more than one dying species. They had proven that sometimes courage and compassion could overcome fear and power. The real war was just beginning, but for the first time, Sarah believed they could win it. The ancient Zephyrian data crystal glowed with soft blue light as Kiravel's hands moved over its surface. She had grown stronger since the humans arrived, the treatments for the silent rot giving her people new hope and energy. But what she found in the crystal's memory banks would shake the galaxy to its core. "Sarah, you need to see this," Kiravel called across the restored command center. The young Zephyrian's voice was tight with controlled anger. Sarah hurried over to where Kiravel stood before a massive crystal display. The harmonic interface had taken weeks for humans to learn, but Kiravel moved through the data like she was reading a book. Images and sounds flowed through the crystal, telling a story that had been hidden for 50 years. "This is a recording from the Altarian High Command," Kiravel explained. "Stored in our emergency archives. Watch." The crystal showed the image of Admiral Vexthan, the Altarian military leader from 5 decades ago. His bird-like features were sharp and cruel as he addressed a council of other Altarian officers. "The Zephyrian harmonic weapons represent an unacceptable threat to Imperial expansion," Vexthan was saying. "Their technology could neutralize our fleet advantages and encourage other species to resist our authority. The solution is simple. Eliminate the threat at its source." Another officer, younger but equally cold, raised a clawed hand. "Direct military action would be seen as unprovoked aggression by the Galactic Council, which is why we will not use direct military action," Vexthan replied with something that might have been a smile. "Our biological weapons division has developed a targeted plague. It will appear to be a natural disease, spreading slowly enough that the Zephyrians will seem to be dying from unfortunate circumstances rather than enemy action." Sarah felt sick as she watched the recording. The Altarians had planned every detail of the genocide with cold efficiency. They had even prepared false evidence of natural mutation to explain the silent rot's appearance. The beauty of this approach, Vexthon continued, is that other species will blame the Zephyrians for their own extinction. They will see the quarantine as necessary protection rather than complicity in murder. By the time the last Zephyrian dies, no one will remember that they ever posed a threat to us. The recording ended, leaving the command center in shocked silence. Dr. Nakamura, who had been working on nearby crystal computers, looked pale and shaken. 50 years, he whispered. They've been slowly murdering an entire species for 50 years, and the galaxy helped them do it. Kiravel's shimmer had turned a deep, angry red. Now you understand why the survivors hid these crystals. We knew the truth, but who would believe us? Who would care about the word of a dying species against the mighty Altarian Empire? Sarah's mind was racing. The evidence was undeniable, but evidence alone wouldn't be enough. The Altarians would claim the recordings were fake, that desperate Zephyrians had created false memories to gain sympathy. They needed more than proof. They needed justice. Can you access the Altarian military networks? Sarah asked Kiravel. Young Zephyrian's eyes widened. You want to hack into their systems? Sarah, that would be an act of war. They declared war on your people 50 years ago, Sarah replied grimly. We're just making sure everyone knows about it. Working together, human computer specialists and Zephyrian harmonic technicians began the most daring cyber operation in galactic history. The hybrid technology that had restored the planetary defenses proved perfect for penetrating Altarian security systems. Human adaptability and creativity combined with Zephyrian harmonic frequencies to create viruses that could slip past any defense. Within days, they had access to 50 years of classified Altarian military files. The evidence was overwhelming. Detailed plans for the genocide, progress reports on the silent rot's spread, even congratulatory messages when Zephyrian population centers fell silent. But the Altarians weren't sitting idle. Admiral Kethvar had been replaced by Admiral Zarketh, a younger and more ruthless commander who brought with him the largest Altarian fleet ever assembled. 200 warships surrounded Kepler 442b, cutting off all communication with the outside galaxy. Attention, human terrorists! Zarketh's voice crackled across all frequencies. You have violated Galactic Council law and threatened Imperial security. Surrender immediately or face complete annihilation. Sarah stood in the planet's command center, surrounded by screens showing the massive fleet arrayed against them. The hybrid defenses were powerful, but they had never been tested against such overwhelming force. Admiral, we're receiving transmission. Requests from across the galaxy, reported Lieutenant Torres, who had joined the growing number of human military personnel defecting to the Sanctuary fleet. Dozens of species want to know what's happening here. Open all channels, Sarah ordered. It's time for the galaxy to hear the whole truth. What followed was the largest simultaneous broadcast in galactic history. Using the Crystal Network's quantum harmonic capabilities, the evidence of the Zephyrian genocide was transmitted to every inhabited world simultaneously. No government could block it, no authority could suppress it. The reaction was immediate and explosive. On the core worlds, massive protests erupted as citizens learned what had been done in their name. Smaller species that had long feared Altarian expansion realized they could be next. Even within the Altarian Empire, there were uprisings as younger generations rejected the genocidal policies of their leaders. But Admiral Zarketh had received his orders directly from the Altarian Emperor. Destroy all evidence of the genocide, including the planet and everyone on it. Final warning, humans, he broadcast. Surrender or die. Sarah looked around the command center at the faces of humans and Zephyrians working side by side. These people had given up everything to be here, to stand against a galaxy that valued order over justice. They deserved better than empty words. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Haven Defense Force, she replied, using the new name they had chosen for their growing fleet. We do not surrender to genocidal cowards. The Altarian attack began with a bombardment that would have destroyed any normal planetary defense. Energy beams that could crack continents slammed into the crystal shield grid, making the entire planet ring like a massive bell. But the hybrid technology held, absorbing and redirecting the energy back into space. More importantly, the quantum harmonic network was recording everything. Every war crime, every deliberate targeting of civilian areas, every moment of the battle was being broadcast live across the galaxy. The Altarians weren't just fighting a small group of human rebels. They were fighting the growing outrage of billions of beings who had seen the truth. As the battle raged, something unexpected began happening. Ships started arriving at the edge of the system, not to join the Altarian fleet but to oppose it. The first was a small convoy of Centauri vessels, declaring they would not stand by while genocide was completed. Then came ships from the Tau Ceti Republic, the Vegan free colonies, even some human vessels that had broken with Earth's official neutrality. "Admiral," Kiravel called from her station, "I'm detecting massive quantum disruptions throughout Altarian space. Their communication networks are failing." Sarah smiled grimly. The cyber viruses they had planted were finally activating, spreading through Altarian systems like the plague they had used against the Zephyrians. But instead of killing people, these viruses were killing lies, broadcasting the truth about 50 years of genocide to every Altarian citizen. The empire that had seemed so powerful was cracking under the weight of its own crimes. Rebellions erupted on a dozen worlds. Fleet commanders defected rather than participate in obvious war crimes. The galactic order that had protected the genocide for 50 years was finally falling apart. Admiral Zarketh's voice came over the communication channel one last time, but now it was desperate rather than threatening. "This is not over, humans. The Empire will not forget this betrayal." "Good," Sarah replied, "because neither will we." As the Altarian fleet retreated in disorder, Sarah looked out at the crystal cities rising from the ruins of the old world. They glowed with a new kind of light now, the light of hope shared between two species who had learned to trust each other. The reckoning had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 5 years had passed since the Battle of Kepler 442b, and the galaxy looked very different now. Sarah stood on the observation deck of the new orbital station that circled the Zephyrian homeworld, watching cargo ships from dozens of species arrive with supplies and volunteers. Below them, the planet glowed with the light of rebuilt crystal cities that reached toward the stars like flowers seeking the sun. "Admiral, the delegation from the Procyon system has arrived," announced Commander Torres. He wore the blue uniform of the Haven Defense Force now, proudly displaying the insignia that showed a human hand and a Zephyrian crystal clasped together. Sarah nodded, but didn't turn away from the window immediately. She was watching a group of children playing in the station's central park. Human children with bright eyes and quick movements, Zephyrian children with their beautiful rainbow shimmer, and others from the dozens of species that had found refuge in the Haven worlds. They played together like it was the most natural thing in the galaxy. The Haven worlds. That's what they called themselves now, a growing confederation of planets where species could find safety from persecution, aid in times of crisis, and hope for a better future. It had started with just Kepler 442b and a handful of human volunteers. Now it encompassed 47 worlds and over 100 species. "How many is that today?" Sarah asked as they walked toward the conference center. 12 new applications for membership," Torres replied, "including 3 that are still technically part of the Galactic Council. The Rigel colonies want protection from Altarian trade restrictions. The Centauri mining worlds are asking for help with their worker rights disputes, and the Sirius Diplomatic Corps wants to establish a formal embassy here." Sarah smiled. The galaxy's power structure was shifting, and the old empires didn't like it. The Altarian Empire was still powerful, but they had lost much of their moral authority after the genocide revelations. Several of their former colonies had declared independence, and their own citizens were demanding reform. The Vegan Confederacy had split into 3 smaller governments, each trying to prove they were more ethical than their predecessors. In the conference center, representatives from dozens of worlds were gathered around a massive crystal table that hummed softly with harmonic energy. The technology was a perfect example of what humans and Zephyrians could accomplish together. Human engineering providing structure and adaptability, Zephyrian harmonics providing processing power and elegance. Elder Veltar sat at the head of the table, and Sarah was amazed every time she saw him. The treatments for the silent rot had not only stopped the disease, but actually reversed much of the damage. His shimmer was bright again, and the gray patches had faded to faint scars. More importantly, his people were thriving. The Zephyrian population had grown from 50,000 survivors to over 200,000, with more being born healthy every year. "Welcome, friends," Veltar said in his musical voice. "Today we discuss the expansion of the Haven Worlds Charter to include the Vega system's refugee camps. The discussion that followed would have been impossible 5 years ago. Representatives from species that had barely known each other's names were working together to solve complex humanitarian crises. The Procyon delegates, cat-like beings with silver fur, were offering to share their agricultural technology with the struggling Vega colonies. The crystal-based Anebians were providing quantum computers to help process asylum applications. Human medical teams were coordinating with Zephyrian healers to treat diseases that had never been seen before. But the most important speaker was Kira Vell, who had become the Haven world's first interspecies ambassador. She moved between the different groups, translating not just languages but entire ways of thinking. Her unique understanding of both human and Zephyrian cultures made her the perfect bridge between worlds. "The question is not whether we can help the Vega refugees," she said, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones that made Zephyrian speech so beautiful. "The question is how quickly we can do it. Every day we debate is another day that children go hungry in the camps." After the meeting, Sarah and Kira Vell walked through the station's memorial garden, where crystal trees grew alongside earth roses and flowers from 100 other worlds. At the center stood a simple monument with the names of everyone who had died in the fight against the genocide, humans and Zephyrians and the members of other species who had joined them along the way. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't come back?" Kira Vell asked. Sarah touched one of the crystal trees, feeling its harmonic vibration through her fingertips. "I think someone else would have come. Maybe not as soon. Maybe not in the same way, but someone would have cared enough to try." "You really believe that?" "I have to. If I didn't believe that most people want to do the right thing when they know the truth, then all of this would be meaningless." They walked in comfortable silence until they reached the station's center, where a massive viewing window showed the planet below. The crystal cities were beautiful, but what made Sarah's heart sing was the sight of the space elevators and orbital platforms that connected the surface to the stars. Zephyrian harmonic technology and human engineering had created a civilization that was greater than either species could have built alone. "Admiral Chen to the command center," came Torres's voice over the station intercom. "Priority message from Earth." In the command center, Sarah found herself facing the image of Administrator Marcus Webb on the main screen. He looked older and more tired than when she had last seen him, and his official Colonial Authority uniform seemed somehow smaller on him. "Admiral Chen," he said formally, "I've been authorized by the Earth government to extend an official apology for our previous policies regarding the Zephyrian crisis. We would like to discuss the possibility of Earth joining the Haven Worlds Confederation." Sarah almost laughed. 5 years ago, Webb had called her a traitor and a criminal for trying to help the Zephyrians. Now he was begging to join the very organization he had tried to stop. "Administrator Webb," she replied calmly, "Earth is welcome to apply for membership like any other world. However, membership requires a commitment to our founding principles: the protection of the innocent, the defense of the vulnerable, and the belief that all sentient life has value regardless of political convenience." Webb's face reddened slightly. "Admiral, surely you understand that Earth's position was difficult. We had to consider the broader implications of—" "You had to consider whether protecting innocent people from genocide was worth risking your comfortable position in an unjust system," Sarah interrupted. "The answer you chose speaks for itself." After the transmission ended, Kira Vell placed a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. "That was harsh, even for you." "Was it?" Sarah looked out at the stars where ships from the Haven worlds were already heading toward the Vega system to help the refugees there. 5 years ago, Earth chose politics over people. The Altarians chose power over justice. The Galactic Council chose order over truth. How many people died because of those choices? And how many people are alive today because you chose differently? Sarah smiled. That was the real measure of success, wasn't it? Not the number of worlds that had joined their confederation, not the political changes they had forced across the galaxy, but the simple fact that children who should have died were playing in the gardens outside. Later that evening, Sarah stood in her quarters looking at a picture on her desk. It showed the crew of the original Persistence, herself, Torres, Dr. Martinez, and the others who had first discovered the Zephyrian survivors. Some of them were still with the Haven worlds, some had returned to Earth, and some were memorialized in the Crystal Garden, but all of them had made a choice that mattered. Her door chimed, and Dr. Elena Vasquez entered, carrying a bottle of something that sparkled like starlight. Elena now headed the Haven World's Medical Research Division, and her work had saved not just the Zephyrians but dozens of other species threatened by biological weapons or genetic diseases. "Thought you might want to celebrate," Elena said, pouring 2 glasses of the sparkling liquid. The Vega mission launched on schedule, and the first refugee ships should reach safety within the week. They drank in comfortable silence. 2 old friends who had given up everything to follow their conscience and somehow ended up helping to reshape the galaxy. "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked finally. Sarah looked out her window at the crystal cities below, at the ships carrying hope to distant worlds, at the children of a dozen species growing up together in peace. How could I regret this? As the night cycle settled over the station, Sarah walked through the quiet corridors one more time. In the medical bay, human doctors and Zephyrian healers worked together to treat patients from across the galaxy. In the engineering sections, teams of mixed species designed new technologies that combined the best of each culture. In the schools, children learned not just facts and figures, but the most important lesson of all, that differences in appearance or culture were less important than the values they shared. The galaxy had once written off the Zephyrians as a lost cause, worthless, and dying. But in saving them, humanity had proven something more important than any military victory or political alliance. They had proven that sometimes the greatest strength came not from SDI,